Should you learn a language on your own or should you take a class? And by class, I mean any combination, a group, in person, online, a tutor, something like that. So there's a lot of talk in the polyglot community about learning a language on your own, and that's all well and good and a viable option for some people. At the same time, super hyper polyglot Richard Simcott, organizer of the Polyglot Conference, has studied over 50 languages, fluent in many of them, has talked about enjoying taking language classes. So what gives? And what should you do? Should you take a class or try to learn a language on your own? So which direction you should go when learning a language depends a lot on you as a learner. So in this video, I'm going to break down when you might want to consider taking a class and when you might want to try to learn a language on your own. And super important to mention, I'm not talking about the school system class. That has its own limitations. It's like an entire conversation for another day. When I say class, I mean either a language school that specializes in teaching languages, perhaps an online thing, a tutor, it could be group, it could be one-on-one, but that's what I mean by class. So let's get into the advantages of taking a class. Number one, it's social. There are other humans. You can talk to them in the language, which is great. So when you're studying on your own, a big thing that is a struggle for many people is either finding or having people to speak to on a regular basis, and a class has that worked in. Hopefully it's a small class where you can talk to the teacher, but also the other people in the group as well. And it's this social factor was one of the things that Richard Simcott mentioned as why he sometimes likes to include taking a language class as part of learning a language, is because you interact with other people and use the language. Now this is when you are in a group of other people who are like-minded, who want to do the same thing. It can be a great dynamic. Number two, a class gives you structure. And I have a friend who's been talking about learning Spanish for years, and let's just say she had good intentions, but didn't happen until now. I just talked to her recently, and she starts speaking to me in Spanish, which is awesome because she's taking a class, because it finally made it happen. And that's the advantage with the class. When you're studying on your own, sometimes, the freedom is great, but at the same time, it's sometimes hard to make it happen. You have to actually study on your own and make time in your schedule. So if you have good intentions to learn a language, but for whatever reason, it's been a challenge to make it happen, a class might be a helpful piece of the puzzle. Another key reason why classes can be very helpful is you get more guidance from the instructor. And this is if you are especially in a small group setting, or especially if it's one-on-one, you can get more feedback, you can get more guidance, you can get your questions answered more easily. So something else that can come really handy with a class is resources and materials. So usually when you take a class, they give you resources to not only learn the language, but a lot of the times they can point you in the right direction if you have a question about trying to find content, for example. And in the example of working with a tutor, oftentimes they'll be able to pull out content or language learning material on topics that you have a question about pretty easily. So far it doesn't sound too bad, right? But okay, what's wrong with the class? Because they're not all perfect, and here's where sometimes a class is not the best answer for you. Number one, and a big problem oftentimes is classes, is there's not enough speaking practice. And this can have to do with the structure of the class and the activities that you do. It can also depend on the group dynamic of the other people in the class, if it's a group class, or it also can depend on you and how you go about it. So when I was in college, I studied abroad in Spain, and go to Spain, do the study abroad thing. However, after class was over, all the study abroad students that were around me switched to English. So I ended up spending most of my time there speaking English. And I came back and I was filled with all this regret. It's like, wait a second, that wasn't the point. Okay, was it an experience? Yeah, of course, I lived in Spain. I'm not really complaining. However, at the same time, I did regret not really working on my Spanish more, and I didn't feel like that class advanced my level in Spanish a lot until I decided to do it again as an adult. As an adult, I was like, no, I'm going to do this the right way. So I went back to Spain and I took a language class at a language school. And this time I was a little hesitant because at that point I already knew Spanish. Like, what am I going to do? Okay. But anyway, I tried. They're usually week to week. So it's like, I'll do it for a week. If I don't like it, I don't stay. Hey, right? So I did it. It was great. The instructor was engaging and interesting, and challenged us. The rest was cool. The rest of the group, there are people from 14 different countries, and you got to know all these different people. And the whole time we were speaking Spanish. We ended up becoming friends. We hung out outside the classroom, and it was Spanish the whole time. So much so that by the end of it, English felt foreign to me because I had been speaking Spanish the entire time. So in that example, the first class, not, 5-star review on my recommendation list, but the second one was amazing. So a lot of a class value can have to do with the class itself, the people in the class, but also what you take into your hands and you decide to do with it. Another problem with some classes is that often a class, especially if they're bigger, has some sort of one size fits all. And if that style of teaching doesn't fit with your style of learning, then it isn't the best combination. And this is why some classes aren't as effective for everybody. And that's totally normal. But in the case of a language school, which is often week to week, or a language tutor, which you could just have one session, if you don't vibe with their teaching style or are on the same page with the type of content that they use, you can always try somebody else out. Oh, and by the way, I did a video on iTalki, which is an online tutoring platform. Also, I have some tips on how to find a great tutor for you to make sure that you have this sort of dynamic where you both fit and you're learning a lot. If you're interested, check that out after this. For a class to be effective and efficient, it's important to try to have something that fits your level and your interests. And if that is something that you can't have at the moment, maybe it would be better for you to try to do things on your own. And actually, no matter what, if you are in a class or not, I would highly recommend for you to do things on your own, especially if you're stuck in a class, hopefully not, that's not exactly the vibing with your style. Then do something that is fun for you in the language. Watch a movie. Listen to music, do something. And that way you'll end up still being interested in the language and learning at the same time. And the same goes for if a class is going at a slower or faster pace than you feel comfortable with. When you're studying on your own, it's nice to be able to choose what you're learning, how you're learning, what materials you're using. It gives you more responsibility to have to do those things, but it also gives you the freedom. So if that's something that right now is speaking to you, it's like, yes, that sounds like me, that's appealing to you, maybe you would want to go down the independent road of learning a language on your own. So should you take a class? I can't speak for all language schools and language classes. I can see the benefits, a lot of benefits, of taking a class or working with a tutor, especially one-on-one, because then you can have the guidance, there can be structure, you get feedback, it makes you speak, which is really key, important practice and towards becoming fluent. I can also see why somebody wouldn't want to take a class if they want the freedom to do what they want. So honestly, the ideal situation I see is a combination of both learning independently, working on language things on your own, and either taking a class or working with a tutor. A lot of the tutors that I've worked with, it's became just like talking to a good friend. It wasn't work. It was just having a conversation. They would help me out here and there, and I would improve. And personally, I like picking my own content to learn from. How to learn the language content, it's nice to have that structured so you can get a base. However, when it goes further out, content for native speakers, I want to pick the videos that I watch and the movies or the music that I listen to. That's very personal. And that's something though you can do no matter what. And I would highly encourage you to, because whatever language you're learning, guaranteed there's amazing content out there that you could like in that language. And why not get a 2-for-1 special and enjoy it at the same time? Actually, I have some right here. Here's content that I've had, language learning material from different classes, notebooks. There I have literature. Here's Meal when I was doing some independent language study work, and cookbooks because food is delicious. I mean, come on. Oh, and by the way, hey, I'm Genevieve. I'm a language coach, which is kind of like a personal trainer for languages. So if you're feeling a little lost, not sure what to do, if you're trying to study a language on your own, or what to do if you are in a class with the activities, I definitely could help set you up to be successful, make a personalized plan, make sure that you're doing things that are interesting to you in the language, so you're learning the most efficient way possible, get you to your goals faster, things like that. If you're interested, check out the information, and no matter what, happy language learning. Catch you soon.